good session with Freddy. I am going to try to make this task as quickly as possible, but also as beneficial as possible. So I'm not going to rush it, but I will try to do a little bit of time catch up for you. So let's get straight into it. So task H, you were asked to respond. You were asked to respond to Ryan's email, right? Regarding the email that is titled Parents Unhappiness, right? Now, this was a pervasive task. It wasn't a task that was specifically triggered in your pre-release. It was something that you were given on the day, and you needed to apply your mind and think about the considerations when you were presented with a problem. Right, so guys, I see some hands. Are those old hands from when we were back, or it's already questions on task H? Lungile and Sumaya. Questions or all the hands? All right, great. Awesome. Looks like they're old hands. All right, so you need to take a step back and think, what are the components of task H? What am I being asked about, right? And you need to think about how you would link this to your information that you already have, right? Information you've read throughout your pre-release, information you've read throughout your information on the day. How do you use that to benefit yourself? So you didn't have to specifically research for this, but you'll see as we discuss this task that there's so many components that you could have linked to other things that you already knew about the entity. Now that you've had time to have a look at this case study again, guys, what do you think happened on the day? How did you do on the day that you wrote this assessment? In reflection, of course. Any thoughts?
Hi, Kumo.
Hello.
I'm surprised I didn't get a C for this task, so I'm very interested to hear how we're going to tackle it.
Is it? All right. Looking forward to the conversation, Tara. So here, you needed to think about 3 things that you were being asked. And I'll tell you now. Let's just have a look. Let's just zoom in at the task. These were the 3 things that you were being asked to do, right? So I've just gone to the end of the email so that we can just have a chat. So you're asked, do you think RFA's demand for rebates of tuition fees in 2020 had validity? So number 1, you had to say, well, is it valid or is it not? Their claims or their demands, are they valid or they are not, right? Number 2, what are some of the factors the directors of Archegos should have considered in assessing whether to grant rebates? So before you gave rebates, what should we have considered? Okay, that's aspect number 2. Aspect number 3, and what should Archegos have done with regard to the negative social media posts by certain parents? Okay, very, very, very important. And you also see that as we read the task, there are certain things that were worrying Ryan that you also needed to address. But for starters, Atara, did you respond to these 3 things? Did you see it this way?
Yes, I did. I have even numbered them here on my information of the day.
Interesting. So I'm going to be interested in hearing them, but a little bit later. So I see Cindy says on 1 December, I was very emotional. I also lost my cool like Ryan. So I didn't answer the question. I just projected my anger towards Zaka's incompetence and treatment of come on. So so don't stress, Cindy. Let's see how we went with this, right? Because you would see that what was happening in this task also has some sort of flavor to what then happened post the 1st of December, right? There's so many similarities, how you deal with things, how you respond to things, etc., in order to settle the space that is happening or the issues that are happening in the social media, right? Because there's so many things like that. But anyway, let's get back to the task. So, in the task, you needed to think about your approach, right? These were your considerations. Your approach, you need to think about the parents in the context of stakeholders. You need to think about the basis of RFA's demand, right? What do they call them? Rebates for all, right? You need to think about RFA's demands. You need to think about whether the company benefited from cost reductions as per claims from RFA, right? Number one, did you do any financial analysis? Did you look at the revenue? Did you look at the employee cost? Did you look at the operating costs? Is it making sense versus what RFA is demanding or claiming, right? So in your pre-release, chances are you would have analyzed your financial statements, correct? Did you all do that? Or it was just one of those things that was missed?
I did. I did
did?
analyze. I
Yes.
did, but I don't think I linked it back to this task on the day.
And you already see that they're talking about cost reductions that were there. And you'll see as we read, right? Then you also need to say, okay, is this actually true? They're claiming that we had these cost reductions. Is this what happened? You see some of those things. Are there any cash flow constraints that restrict ARC egos? You would recall that throughout the information we were told about them considering issuing debentures, looking at 4 million cash injection for them to ease their cash flow. So how are they able to deal with the rebates, etc.? So those were also considerations. And the biggest that you always see each and every time, right? You will see people talking about social media, and it's trending now. Social media, how do you respond to issues? Well, the first thing is you need to have a control in place. You need to have the social media policy in place, right? And what are the considerations in that policy? How do you deal with matters relating to social media when it comes to, and in this case, it wasn't just about, what's his name, Ryan, but it was also if you bring your child to this school, right? Then also you also need to have some sort of code of conduct. You need to comply with some sort of policies as well, even if it's social media. So as a parent, as teachers, as the candidates, as the school staff, there are certain things that we should follow when it comes to a social media policy. So it wasn't just one-sided, it's about everybody. And I can see many people talking about social media policy in the context of Ryan and or from Ryan's perspective, but forgetting that the parents also need to be complying with the school social media policy. Does that make sense? Did you guys think about that?
Hi, Kumo. To me, it doesn't make sense.
Is
because
it?
Because the parents,
Because?
I don't know, because the parents are customers.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes.
So why are they responsible for maintaining the reputation or following policies of the school?
Okay. Think about it from this angle. Think about if you bring your child to school as a parent, right? Your child
Right.
is our student, right? But
Yeah.
who is the real customer, right? The child is not an independent grown child, right? You're paying the school
Yeah.
fees as the parent, so we've got the
Mm.
contract with you as the person responsible for the account, right? But
Yeah.
now, when you want to come to school, to our school, sorry, as a parent, you bring your kid, we ought to have a code of conduct, right? We ought to have our own policies that need to be followed, right? So there are certain things that you as the responsible account holder can do that can discredit the school or bring the school into disrepute if you want to start copying from the CPC, right? So those things also parents need to comply with, right? It's just good policy if you want to maintain the integrity of your code of conduct, right? Because then everybody will be saying, well, but it's not me. You just need to think about the student. But the parents will just go and discredit the school anyway.
Okay, I'm just imagining this from I don't have children yet, but I'm just imagining this from, say, rental, right? When I enter into the rental contract, I'm given like terms and conditions of the contract, rules and regulations of the building, and things like that. But it never comes as a policy. So I'm just imagining here, were the parents given their contract, the children, and then the policies of the school, or some aspects of the policies were embedded on the contract?
Exactly. So you need to have that contract. So you gave a very good example, and I like it, right? Because you said when you enter into a rental agreement. So think about it. You are entering into a rental agreement into a sectional title complex, right? Have you ever heard of what is called body corporate rules?
Yes.
Right? You're asked to sign those and comply with those, right? So
Yeah.
Even if you're not staying there and you're renting for somebody else, right? It comes back to buy who? You, right?
Me, because
Exactly.
I'm the
Exactly. So that's the same principle. There's certain things that need to be in place to maintain the integrity of the space that you're entering into.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. Let's move on, right? Let's get straight into what the email looked like, right? So let's read it. Let's break it down. I want to hear your thoughts as you're reading it. Now, I probably should not be asking for advice from you, right? So clearly, Ryan is looking at us advising him on something. Then he says, but I am looking to learn from what happened. Please be honest in your assessment of the situation and do not hesitate to point out any errors in my thinking. I will not hold it against you. So what does this mean, ladies and gents? It means that if you've got any reservations on what he's saying and what he's thinking, you need to correct him. You need to say, this is not correct. This is correct. This I can do. This can't do. Okay. So what are we saying? During July 2020, a group of disgruntled parents calling themselves Rebates for All, RFA, approached our CEO with a list of demands. They were extremely unhappy that Archegos had not provided a rebate in tuition fees for all learners, right? So this is number one. They are not unhappy, they are unhappy, right? Extremely unhappy that Archegos had not provided a rebate in tuition for all learners, right? They were saying it must be for all learners. All right, awesome. And then they say their argument was that during the COVID-19 lockdown, learners were often not able to attend school on campus and had to endure untold hardships. Archegos was able to reduce costs during the lockdowns because of the reduction in on-campus activities. RFA became aware that Archegos had temporarily reduced teachers' salaries in 2020 and had encouraged teachers to claim from temporary employment or employee relief schemes TERS. Many of our teachers were successful and did receive tax-free TERS payouts from the government. Now, going back to this, you ought to have thought about, well, 2020 was an unprecedented year, right? If you think about the COVID-19 pandemic, many learners, many students spent a considerable amount of time learning online, those that could learn online. And for many different households, many different parents, right? Life changed. People had to now start staying at home, schooling their kids, making sure they've done homework from home, taking care of the school activities and stuff like that. And it was therefore a very, very, very difficult. So from a pervasive way, if you actually bring it in a way that, because before you start heckling Ryan, you need to start telling him about, the considerations. Well, indeed, it was a difficult year, so I can see where these guys are coming from. I can see why they're complaining, right? Now, is there anything on this slide, guys, that you guys thought of? Anything on this slide that you guys thought of that you want to share?
Hi, Kumo.
Hmm.
I just thought these parents were very entitled. That was the first thing.
So how do you
And
tell them that you're so entitled, parents? How do you do that?
you find words like, remember that Archigos is a business. And so us giving everyone a discount, even those who are not harshly affected by COVID, it would not be a good business decision. I'm trying to be kind. So
And I like it because you're gonna have to find a way to tell Ryan that this is also something that we need to consider telling the parents, right? I like it. Okay, cool. Molebohe, I like the hands are coming up here, guys. You're still active at 9 o'clock.
Hi, Kumo. So
Hello.
with me, I think my question was around how did management come up with the rebate decision? What happened to including the schools council in making this decision? Because I feel like if the schools council was included, they would have represented the parents' interest, and maybe this problem wouldn't be drawn out of proportion, because they would the parents would have been involved in the decision making.
Okay, so you are thinking about transparency with the parents
and inclusivity.
All right, how does that go hand in hand with the entitlement Atara is talking about?
I don't know.
All right, so what I'm trying to say is there are certain areas that are gray areas, right? But remember, for this task, there's one thing that I want you to all know. It's regardless of the conclusion that you come up with, right? The way you put the issues across, right? Whether you're going for this person or not supporting this person, but how you articulate it and the points you put forward, the conclusion needs to make sense. It needs to be supported. Does that make sense? So you can go Atara's way, and then you can go, oh, okay, maybe I'll go Mole's way, right? But the way you articulate it, you need to show that it's making sense, and these are the considerations. Cindy?
Hi, come on. So for me, I went like from A side, perhaps they didn't, like the teachers are saying that they reduced all these costs. Like we know that there's some costs that you're not going to reduce. You're not going to reduce the bond on the building or the rental or whatever. You're only reducing rent and electricity. But also on the teachers, not the teachers, the parent side, it's also valid for them to say that you can't just be looking at, I don't know, maybe the low income parents and saying that, okay, under, I don't know, 300,000 per year, you're going to experience hardships. Like maybe these people are living in Santon or whatever it is, but they haven't paid their bond and they are risking getting evicted or whatever the case is. You won't know that kind of thing. Maybe they still have the high salary, but now instead of 10% going to school fees, 80% is going to school fees, and they still on the outside maintaining the that they wouldn't need this rebate, but they do need it. I also
you make very valid points, Cindy, right? But I just want you to be cautious when you bring those points across, because you might end up writing home about it unnecessarily. Because the key on this part, on that aspect that you want to talk about, is to acknowledge that, well, 2020 was difficult for everyone, right? Exactly what I was saying. People worked from home. Now they had to work, teach their kids, do their homework, help them do their homework, not do their homework. and all those things, right? People struggled, people lost jobs, etc. So you just need to acknowledge that and not then start to justify and all those things. So it was very, 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 very important. It's a good point, but how you put it matters, because you might waste time then going deep into it, but actually just highlighting it would make sense before you incriminate yourself saying something else, right? So I like it. I always saw, my apologies, I always forget what the first name is. T Chirindo. What's the first name?
Tinashe. Sorry,
Tinashe. Okay,
I'm
good.
using my UNISA account. So when they just, I don't know how they type my name at UNISA there, but anyway, I just want to comment on the statement that you read about the tears. Personally, I felt like the RFA's concern was valid, because when the government paid that TERS to the employees, I mean, it was a saving to the company. What I wanted to say also is, I'm talking on the salary, so they save on the expense. So they could have maybe find a way to give rebates to whoever qualify or whatever policy they have. Not exactly the full the savings they made on the test. But I mean, they could have done something if they were really considering all the stakeholders, which is the parents, because 2020, like what you said, was a very difficult year. I wanted to say also, as a parent, I have a child. I must tell you that I've been paying school fees throughout 2020. So it didn't matter. I remember the government, there was some time when they said, no, you don't, you still have the obligation to pay your school fees and all stuff like that. So I experienced that, and I paid my fees throughout COVID-19. So I'm not sure in the case of Archigos, but I felt like if they really want to include or help everyone in the process, they could have maybe try and see how they can assist the parents based on these savings they made from UIF.
And I hear you, Tinashe, right? Yeah, I wish I could say or share how you felt, but my baby only came in December last year, and that's after the horror. So, but I can only imagine, hey. But what we need to think about as well is many people zoned in and thought about the stakeholders being the parents only. Those are not the only stakeholders, right? You also need to think about the other stakeholders who've got different interests now. So there are many key stakeholders in play, right? Yes, parents are key stakeholders, but who are also the other stakeholders that also need to make sure that this goes the way that they also want, which could be in different directions with the parents. So you need to also acknowledge that, right? So it was one thing that I think people would have zoned on the parents and forget the other key stakeholders. How many of you remembered the other key stakeholders?
I think this is kind of similar situation with SciCon December. So a student was just worried about their struggle. We didn't really care about what the CEO is gonna say, and So yeah, I definitely forget about this, because from my experience, I felt like it was really unfair to keep on paying rent. Sorry, school fees.
Yeah.
When the child is at home all month.
Yeah, 2020 was crazy. Timakatso, your hand is up.
Hi, Kumo. I think my approach on this one was mainly to say I agree with the parents, maybe because I'm also a parent. And
the bias, you need to take it out, Timakatso.
the thing is, Kumo, in that year, what was happening is that the school will just send a list of work that needs to be done with little explanation, and we all, okay, those who are parents, they know the difficulty in terms of this homeworks that they give to these kids. So you could understand that at the same point I'm working from home. On the other hand, I need to assist these kids with all this homework. So therefore, I felt like these parents, they have a valid claim to say they also need to be compensated for the work that they are doing at home in a form of a reduced school fees. Also considering that it's true, the school has saved a lot of money in terms of the kids being at home, because now they use less electricity. Most of the stuff they have reduced it, including the employee cost, where they claimed the test. So it wouldn't do any harm for them to share the little cost that they have saved with the parents in the form of the reduced school fees. Yes.
So your thinking is right, but you needed to test that thinking, Timakatsu, right? Because it's very easy to say costs were saved, right? But then if you look at the numbers are saying something else. Right?
I did look into the numbers, but
remember in document 1, I think in the pre-release, where you've got the background, you've got the annexure, you've got the financials. If you look at, for example, the revenue, I think it went down. The percentage of employee costs to the rest of the expenses went up. I will talk about that just now. Some costs increased also, I think by what is it, a 5% excluding impairments and things like that. So essentially you'd see that there was really no reduction in costs if you think about it from that angle. So would it be valid to then say that? Because you need to support it with the numbers, right? It's very easy to say, you saved electricity, but were we really told about electricity in the financials? So it's very, very, very important to take note of that. It's a tricky situation, right? But what you're saying about the homeworks being difficult, yeah, I know. My nieces, my nephews, I got sent homework, things that we never did in grade 3. They're doing them later on in life. So earlier on in life. It was crazy. But anyway, anything else on this, guys?
Hi, Kumo.
Hmm.
Is it right? Is it right for a customer to be calculating the expenses of whoever they're doing business with and demand a reduction? I don't know. To me, it was offensive to say you want to be calculating my cents.
So don't forget that they are a key stakeholder, right? And if they've got access to the information, right, they're going to use it. They're going to use it. Because without the parents, there's no school. Right. So that's why you see that you do, and I think you're the one who gave me an example of a body corporate and stuff. Owners actually get the financials, reports, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So it's important. Key stakeholders need to have access to information, and if you give them access to information, well, they can question, they can use, they can ask the questions, and you need to have the answers. And that's why Ryan is looking for advice from you to give him answers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Courage. Courage, your hand is up.
Kumo, if the numbers are not competing with what is being said, to say that there was reduction in costs and stuff like that, would there not be a contradiction between the scenario and the numbers?
Sorry, come again.
I was saying that if the numbers are not communicating to the sense that the costs were reduced, because we are supposed to see the effect of the costs that were reduced in the numbers as well. So if they are not communicating, are they not in contradiction now?
Okay, so you are saying the numbers are indicating that the cost did not reduce, right?
Sure.
Right? Then those extracts, and I see Tinashe says, I don't trust Ryan's numbers. But if you look at that extract, the numbers were saying extract of audited numbers, right? So that's where you're going to say, well, the parents are saying there were reduction in cost savings, but you needed to come in and say, but Ryan, you can go and tell them that actually this is not true because look at this. You see, that was part of your response to Ryan. Does that make sense? Courage?
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Awesome. Cool. Right. I like the conversation, right? Like you guys are still alive. Don't worry, we'll be done soon. This was a quick task. All right. So moving on to the next slide. And this was an interesting one. Courage, is it an old hand? That's a new one. Okay, old hand. Awesome. All right. So Archegos also managed to negotiate reduced payments. So we've been talking about this already. Negotiate reduced payments with certain lessors and drastically cut back on maintenance activities on its 3 campuses. RFA took a hard stance on this. They said Archegos had managed to reduce its costs and should pass on some of those benefits to all parents in the form of rebates. Now, Archegos took the view that a blanket rebate should not be provided to all parents, since Archegos was focusing to incur a loss in FY 2020. RFA became aware that Archegos had temporarily reduced the teachers' salaries in 2020 and had encouraged teachers to claim from the temporary employer-employee relief scheme. Many of our teachers were successful, right? Sorry, I just repeated this stuff, right? Archegos also managed to negotiate reduced payments certainly. So sorry, that's just a repetition. Is it? Yes. All right. But anyway, what we're talking about now is that RFA's contention is that Archegos managed to reduce its operating costs, right, in FY 2020, and that they should pass it to all learners. Now, they say that in COVID lockdown restrictions, learners were often not able to attend school on campus, and hence the learning experience was diminished, right? They say that there should be a blanket rebate. But let's think about these things from this perspective, right? So I've put in about 9 blocks that you could have thought about. You could have thought about the reduction of expenses. So you should tell Ryan, in considering a response to RFA's demands, we should actually consider whether there is substance in their contentions, right? And also the wider stakeholders that we could also have. So for example, if we talk about the reduction of expenses, it is not necessarily true that the way major cost savings, right? Because it may be true that Archegos temporarily reduced teachers' salaries, yes, but that was unique if you think about the COVID-19, guys, that period, right? Many people reduced employee salaries, many people got pay cuts, and it is actually if you look at other industries, you look at hospitality industries, tourism industry, those people actually had to close down completely, as opposed to the school. The schools carried on. But if you think about Archegos expenses, right, and then this is when you have not considered impairments, they increased by about 5% in FY 2020 compared to 2019. The revenue actually declined by 2.2% or around 2.2% in FY 2020. Okay, and this information, you can actually find it in the summarized financial information in document 1 in your pre-released information, right? So therefore, we're saying RFA's contention that Archegos managed to reduce expenses is not factually correct. Okay, so you need to find a way to tell them that. they say that the online learning is much more cost effective than face-to-face learning, right? That's what they said. It's more cost effective than face-to-face learning. But if you think about it, Archigos has already shifted 40%, and that's in document 1 in your pre-release, right? 40% teaching to the online model. And they encouraged learners to do so on campus to encourage social and cultural interaction, etc., etc. But COVID-19 lockdowns prevented that. But however, online learning continued in the homes as opposed to the campus. But we must also be sensitive to those learners that were unable to access
I think you're muted.
Kumo, you're muted.
mute for. I don't know how that muted. How long did it mute for? When was the last time you heard me? Guys? What was the last thing you heard? Can you still hear me, guys?
You're talking about the difficulty, the other students. They forgot to talk about the difficulty of other students to be in the online platform.
Okay, so you guys heard about the reduction of expenses. You heard about the cost effectiveness of the face-to-face.
You were still there in the cost effectiveness
of the face-to-face.
Yes.
Okay, cool, awesome. Sorry about that, guys. I don't even know why it muted. All right, so we need to think about, yes, we shifted 40% online, but the majority of the time that was spent, people were learning from home, parents were home, teachers were home. But however, we also need to consider those students that had difficulties, challenges accessing the online learning platforms. Maybe they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the Wi-Fi, they didn't have the computers. There were different things. So therefore, you can actually use that as a basis to assess a case-by-case rebate for these learners. Does that make sense, guys? Because indeed, there were those that could not afford, those that could afford. But what was the right thing to do? Is it for everyone, or you actually needed to approach it in a staggered way, a way that accommodates everybody? Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, it does make sense for some reason.
For some reason, with reservations, hey. Okay, and then if you think about the employee costs themselves, guys, employee costs represented about 77% of total operating costs, well, if you exclude impairments in FY 2020. In 2019, I think it was about 83%. Okay. There were no retrenchments that we were told about. So this is actually something that you actually need to, to mention to Ryan. You of course talk about your stakeholders, balancing them out. I think we've already talked about this one. There are many stakeholders, right? Including learners, parents, employees, shareholders, lenders, regulators, communities, right? So any decision, such as providing rebates to all learners, should be balanced with the other responsibilities to the other stakeholders. You can't just think about one set of stakeholders. It's very important that you also consider all these other ones. Okay. And if you think about them asking for plus or minus 4 million rand in cash injections, right? In FY 2020 due to lower profitability, worsening credit collections. So to provide a blanket rate or rebate for all learners, it would worsen the cash flow and liquidity position. So that is something that the directors should have actually considered. Same issue with the debentures. They were considering issuing debentures to parents to improve cash flows, right? So providing tuition rebates to all would actually increase the need for funding and what may transpire could be that less financially well-off parents would benefit from rebates, but the more affluent may contribute more by investing in debentures. So you then have to think about it, perhaps something that is more equitable. What would be an equitable route, right? Then you need to think about considering things such as temporary rebates on a case-by-case basis, right? Because some could afford, some could not afford. You could think about actually cautioning Ryan, telling him that if we agree to rebates, it could set a dangerous precedent, okay? People could be crying for permanent reduction in tuition fees. In the future, it could be difficult to reverse these decisions. What would be the risk should we do this? Does that make sense, guys?
It does.
Did you
But
have
now
that, Sarah?
Yeah, but I don't have doubt. I just
No, did you
remember.
have that? You said you addressed each and every point.
Oh no, I wasn't saying that. I wasn't saying that. What I was saying was I went through the rebates system that was used by Curo, and Curo did not give rebates to everyone. They gave rebates to those parents that had needs, a financial difficulty,
case by case,
right? Yes, and they dealt with it case by case. So that's where I was coming from, because if I was also a principal, I would not reduce the rent for everyone. Like, this is not charity. I
Also
don't know. Am
business
I
for somebody
harsh?
else, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. I've got a couple of hands up. Let's just see who that is. I've got Atara, we just spoke. Cindy?
So for setting precedents, like if you just make a statement or a policy or something like that, because these were unprecedented times, in order to say that this is only happening like for this period, surely, like, because even for COVID, when the president said everyone sit home, doesn't mean that whenever something happens, everyone's gonna sit home. Like, we know that this isn't a precedent. Can't they just,
Well, you have to make it known to them, right? If you decide to do that.
Yeah,
right?
so
So like I said, your conclusion needs to be supported by something that makes sense, because it's a pervasive task. Does that make sense?
yes.
Like it, Cindy. Naledi?
Hi, Kumo. This question was quite loaded, ne? So I just want to know, okay, so basically what I'm picking up, especially from the considerations that you're giving us, is that this is hitting a lot of the, enabling competencies and whatnot, because I'm seeing you're speaking about the stakeholders, right, which would fall under that citizenship. There's ethics that's included here, but I'm also picking up like some form of strategy and business acumen, like the way that you're analyzing this. So when I looked at this thing, I felt like I addressed this thing like you would review a working paper, right? Maybe on a line by line basis or topic by topic basis, but I still came up with an LC. So I just want to gain an understanding, ne? Or just maybe if you could assist with the strategy. When you find such a loaded task, should you maybe look at all those non-technical competencies and see if you have addressed them? Like, are you addressing the business acumen? If you're seeing ethics, are you addressing the ethics? Are you speaking to the citizenship and all the stakeholders involved? What do you do? How do you break this down? And sometimes you say we like writing home about things. What was the priority here? What did we need to discuss? Because I feel like when I read it, I picked up ethics and I'm like, okay, I need to focus on what is right and what is wrong and to bring that across. So how does one, because I think if you get an LC with ethics, apparently it affects your ability to get a C overall. I'm not sure if I'm right about that one, but honestly, how does one get through this? Because this is very loaded.
So you see how you're saying that this is a loaded task, Naledi. This is exactly what pervasive means, right? So again, let me just try and look for that slide that had the tasks, so that I can just explain it better to you. It was this one. Good. So you see, this guy is asking you so many questions, right? But in this case, they did not specifically say it's just ethics, right? You're being asked about your views, right? How can you support this? So for example, do you think RIFA's demand for rebates of tuition fees in 2020 had validity, right? Now, do we validate what they're demanding for, or do we say, but what you're demanding is actually not making sense? When you say that, you need to have backup. You need to have evidence. Does that make sense, Naledi?
Yes, it does.
Right? So regardless of where you're going to source that evidence, right? It could be if you decide to support with your numbers, you're not being necessarily asked about your financial management, whatever the case may be, but what can you see that can support this? Is this making sense? Are you with me?
Yeah.
And then of course there would be your your ethical considerations when he asks you about his about your views, etc. But look at that. If you break that task down, it's not just zoned into your ethical considerations, but you also need the things that support what you're going to say to him. So what are some of the factors that directors should have considered in assessing whether to grant rebates? Number one, case by case basis, right? Some people can afford, some don't. There are those learners that actually struggled to get the resources, the laptops, the Wi-Fi, etc. What do we do about those, as opposed to those that actually move around pretty much with everything that they have, right? We are asking for cash injections. We are considering debentures. Can we actually afford to give these rebates? Okay, if we give these rebates, what impact would it have on the other key stakeholders? Yes, the parents are benefiting, but what about the shareholders? They're going to be happy with this. Do you see how you need to think about it?
Yeah, no, I see. I think my issue here would have been, I tried so hard to ensure that my response is I'm responding to an ethical task.
Ethical issue, right? So
Yeah.
I think you guys are set in such a way that, or when I say you guys, it's just a blanket thing. But when I say you guys, I mean, because I also used to do it when I was in your shoes, right? I've been asked about audit. I've been asked about financial accounting. I've been asked about strategy and all those things. Now, I haven't seen any ethics. This must be ethics. Then already you start giving only ethical answers. But it's a pervasive task. It's touching so many things. Okay. Thanks for that, Naledi, right? Because it's very important that you actually think about it. So be careful of making that error. I like it. Okay, cool. Where were we? Okay, then we go to the next slide. Now, this is an interesting read. What does Ryan do? Okay, sorry, there's something in the chat. Let's just see here. Okay, I see people agreeing with Atara there. Okay, now RFA was incensed and subsequently had very heated and emotionally charged meetings with Denise and I. Unfortunately, I lost my cool during one of these meetings and threatened to deny learners entry to the campus if their parents had not paid their tuition fees. Matters became heated and word spread like wildfire among parents and the community. I know I overreacted, but I did apologize in a letter that was sent to all parents, in which I stated that I had made a mistake and was very stressed at the time. I thought the matter was closed at that stage, but then attacks started on social media. Okay. So before we talk about the social media, right? Do you think you're in a position to give comments on how Ryan overreacted. What do you think, ladies and gents?
Hi, Kumo.
Hello.
I think because of that line in the beginning where he says, I must be, what were the words he used? I will not hold it against you. I just thought I should come for him, obviously in a professional way.
Okay, so let's hear it. How did you come for him?
What did I say? Let me think about it now. For me, I took this back to I think it's our core values, where we say they in the pre-release. I'll just quickly open it because I don't remember all of them, but kindness to yourself and others. I said by saying that, first of all, you were not acting within our core values, because threatening to deny learners entry is not kindness to yourself and others. And also it was not respectful the way you dealt with this manner. And it's also one of our core values that says respect for others and for the environment, right?
Okay.
And then the other thing, I appreciate you apologizing for your behavior. However, it also says be responsible for your actions and their outcomes, but the outcomes part comes there by the social media. Yeah, I think that's how I came for him.
Oh, I see. I'm just gonna hold your thought there, Tara. I just want to hear Dimakatso has a hand up.
My only concern was that when he said he threatened to deny learners entry at the campus, so I just thought of the SASA Act and also the right to education for the country. But at the same time, I asked myself whether was that applicable to private school or it's only applicable to public school, because even in the former Model C schools, it still says you can't deny access to education to a child just because the parent is failing to pay school fees. You need to deal with the parent, not the child. So you still allow the child to continue to receive the learning, but you can hand over the parent to whether to legal people or whatnot, but not to deny the child the chance to receive the learning. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. I've got a few more hands up. I'm hearing interesting things here. Linda?
Okay, now I do agree with the previous two candidates, but I think here, because I'm talking to the CFO, I think like, okay, there is a valid point, but the tone was very important here. How I'm raising these issues, I think it was very important. I think they were testing the tone here, according to me. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. There is
I like the point you're bringing, Linda. I like it so much. Okay, Tinashe.
Yeah, I think I took Atara's way, like just to bring him to the core values. Yeah, I just wanted to add because personally I just didn't like Ryan, but I think I got lost in how to address him, because I remember I took him back when I said, yeah, I'm starting to see your true colors, but I didn't put it that way, but in my mind, because there's a time when I think it was document 4 where he said there's a CA that raised this issue, blah, blah. And I mean, for me, I just said I needed to, I say I was afraid. When you told me this thing, I was afraid to address it, but I thought I must just let you know that I don't think it's right to speak to people in that way, because we on the core values you had to respect one another and all kind of stuff. But I don't know if my tone was not, I don't know exactly what I wrote. But I just remember when I came to this point, I took him back to that thing of the CA where he was kind of bitter. I mean, it's a parent. I mean, you cannot speak like that. I felt like he had a thing like because they are CAs, they want to show off or some kind of yeah. So I just wanted to add that on Ryan's conduct. I felt like he was just some other person.
Okay.
Hi, Kumu.
Hello.
Okay, for me, I think what I raised here, I don't know if it was an issue, but I indicated to him that him taking the decision alone to not allow learners to the campus, it wasn't a good move. Next time when there are issues, I think he needs to consult because certain issues needs to be decided by the board and all of that.
I like that word. Certain issues need to be decided by the board. Just hold on to that. Put a pin on that. I'll come back to it. Mole, I don't know if I'm shortening it correctly. Please correct me, eh?
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay.
So with me, when it came to Ryan's conduct, I think this is where I start where the question of whether he was a CA or not came.
Did you ask him, are you a CA or not?
No, I assumed based on what I was getting from the case study, like where he said he didn't attend the tax, I think it was the tax CPD. So I just assumed he was a CA. And this is where I think I started forcing my professional ethics into my response. And I spoke about like professional behavior. But I wasn't sure if I was on the right track because I didn't even know if Ryan is a CA or not.
Okay. I'm hearing something that is consistent to what the others were saying, all right? And I think it was Lou Desmond. I'm not sure which one is the first name. Sorry, man.
Okay. Evening, everybody. Thanks. It's Desmond. Lou is the surname, so this happened. They did a bit of a stuff up.
Okay.
No, one thing that I had to empathize a bit with, but also disagree with him in terms of where Ryan is coming from. Because remember, as you said earlier, you need to consider all the stakeholders. Ryan comes from his perspective as a shareholder. So I needed to also look in that terms to say that Ryan is speaking from that perspective as well as a shareholder, even though I disagreed with him to say that he needs to at least also empathize with the few parents and also as the few colleagues that say based on the values and all those things. But he was coming from that perspective as a shareholder as well, in just keeping the stakeholders all informed. Cool, thanks.
Cool, thanks. I like your view. Right. So guys, one thing that I should let you know is you guys are moving upwards in your in your careers, right? When your boss says you can criticize me, no issues. It's a trap, eh? It seems you guys fell for the trap. So what you guys needed to do here in this task, in my view, there were 3 things that were specific that he asked you about, right? Look at those 3 questions. Do you think RFA's demand for rebates of tuition fees in 2020 had validity? What are some of the factors that directors of Archegos should have considered in assessing whether to grant rebates? And what should Archegos have done with regard to the negative social media posts by certain parents? Okay, he didn't directly ask you about his behavior, right? Because he says, I probably should not be asking for advice from you, but I'm looking to learn from what happened. Please be honest in your assessment of the situation and do not hesitate to point out any errors in my thinking. I will not hold it against you. Now, the trap that you fell for was to link his behavior to what he's asking you here. So you guys got distracted. You started thinking about answering or telling him or responding to him about his behavior, but that's not what he was asking for, right? So, of course, you could have gone on to say, well, hold on, Ryan. Hold on, Ryan. For me, right, for me, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to comment on your outburst. So I won't comment on your outburst. It's something that is best dealt with you and Dennis and the board of directors, right? Play it safe, because he didn't directly ask you about your thoughts on that. But if he had asked you about your thoughts, then you can go all in on him, right? So here you lost track of what you were supposed to actually focus on. Does that make sense, guys?
It
Do you
does.
see?
It does make sense. It's just that this guy was annoying. Like, I agree with the previous speaker. Like, he got to me so much, especially starting there in the pre-release where he was saying this.
Shame. Yeah. And they all tend to be like that, right? Send you emails every 15 minutes. All right, cool. Now let's talk about the social media stuff. Now, I thought the matter was closed at that stage, but then attacks started on social media. I became the object of many attacks on Facebook and Twitter. Screenshots of some of the social media posts by certain parents were forwarded to me. It was vile stuff. I was called uncaring, privileged, and overweight. I took legal advice, but was told that my chances of succeeding in any claim were slim, since these social media companies are based in the USA. I made one mistake in the heat of the moment. We all do. But you see, he's still even not asking you for advice on that. But anyway, when it comes to the social media stuff, you can comment, you can offer a comment, but you don't have to go all in on it, right? You can talk about what these parents are saying on social media could be problematic. So we should be having a social media policy in place, which I assume we have, that is applicable to staff, to learners, to parents, everybody connected to the school, right? And these are the protocols that everyone should follow. And if there are any breaches, we should deal with them in accordance with the policy. You needed to also note that, well, if there is anything abusive, by parents to the teachers, to the staff, it can be dealt with by inviting parents to a meeting, discuss the offensive remarks, receiving feedback. That would actually put some pressure on parents to actually comply with the social acceptable norms. You would want to think about requesting abusive comments to be removed from social media. And if there's anything that is against human rights, you still have an avenue to approach the Human Rights Commission, for example, Equality Court, etc. It depends on what it is. So maybe you just suggest to him to reach out, or the school to reach out to parents through different forums, communicate, maybe a letter, maybe do social media videos to educate people around those things, and whatever goes on. But you don't have to say, don't have to say much. The key things that we asked for are the things you should actually respond to. Okay, so the reason why I'm actually saying this is that, guys, when you see issues about social media, be careful. Don't go all straight in, right? Be selective about what you're going to say. Naledi?
Thanks, Kumo. I think what you mentioned here about us not necessarily commenting on him losing his cool and all of that. I think, okay, on my side, because I followed the ethics response approach, there was that saying that when it comes to ethics, you need to choose a side. Like you need to be clear about which side you're going with, right? So I think that's what I tried to address with maybe responding to him losing his cool and all of that. And with the thing of him threatening to deny learners entry and whatnot, there was this whole thing where I think even during my research, I had, prepared on speaking about one of the SDGs, when it came to education and all of that. So when it comes to stuff like that, how relevant would it be putting it in a response, but without commenting on his
So
behavioral aspect?
I like what you said, right? When it's ethics, you pick a side. But tell me, what is the ethical consideration here? What is it that he did wrong that is not morally right? Right? What is it?
Okay, I think I was responding to the comment on threatening to deny learners entry, because I think I linked that to one of the SDGs, which was the education one. So that's where my comment was coming from.
So yeah. So there, when you know how I said it's not appropriate for me to comment on that, I'm actually picking a side, right? It's for you and the board to discuss, but without necessarily taking it off the park and saying, but you are wrong, this is your boss at the end of the day. Are you with me?
Okay. No, that makes sense. So if he had specifically mentioned, can you advise on whether this was appropriate, or I don't know if he had phrased it in that manner?
Because he's asking you to actually tell him, right?
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, awesome. Atara?
No. Hi, Kumo. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, thank you. For me, I'd like to read the last part of the 3 points that we were asked, right? The last one is, and what should Archegos have done with regards to the negative social media posts by certain parents? So the way I understood it was like Black Twitter, Can you tell people on Black Twitter to stop canceling a person? They won't stop.
Yeah, so that's why I said you can try calling, a meeting with the parents, try and iron out things, ask them to try and withdraw when you guys have consensus. Also start educating the parents, write letters to the parents, tell them why this is right, why this is not right, things, remind them about your social media policy, etc., and all those things. So you can't just sit and look, right? You have to do something to, to save face. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, but again, he provoked them.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, in business, Atara, that's what you have to think about. How do I save my brand? How do I save my image? This has happened. What's the next step forward?
So my response to that was it was bad. It was Ashagos should require this guy Ryan to apologize, like a public apology, and separate the school from his behavior. And that was coming from what I see on social media when somebody does something funny. The business separates, and that person must apologize on their own, because he did this on his own. This Ryan decided that this is what he wants to say. It was not the whole board's decision or thinking. Hence, he had to apologize.
But Atara, regardless of him provoking them in that way, like you say, right? Abusive comments by parents about teachers on any platform is unacceptable, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it would rather make more sense. Try and invite the parents to a meeting, discuss these offensive remarks, discuss what Ryan did, get feedback, give feedback, and you might get a chance to ask them to remove these things from social media, So it's dialogue. Sometimes it just yes, somebody can do something wrong, but it doesn't, two wrongs don't make a right.
That's true, but the point that you're making of asking these parents to remove their points, their comments on social media.
Oh, you have to shoot your shot, yeah? Right?
Okay, just to try. Okay, I suppose, but
Because you
my
ask somebody
thinking
to
was,
do it and they might say no. What are you going to do about it? Right?
Nothing.
Maybe you can think about the, you know, the human rights. If you're maybe it's a racist abuse, maybe it's another type of abuse, whatever the case may be, right? Then you might need to, how do you fix that? Because even if they say that and they don't want to delete it, what else can you do, right? You might even think about the Human Rights Commission, for example. You might think about the Equality Court, because he tried legal, but legal said, "Hey, they're in the US, you can't do anything about it." So that means that there were some serious comments that were degrading that he needed to address. So if you ask them nicely to remove, they can't. What other avenue do you have? You're also giving him that sort of advice, right? Because
Okay.
the third aspect that was asked about the negative things, what could we have done?
Okay, my last question now. What was the point of SAICA giving us this information about him threatening learners, and what was it, context to the response in the the response that the parents gave on social media? Because for them to give us that sentence and expect us to say little.
You're quite right. You know, it's context to what you're seeing on social media. Because if you just started seeing that social media stuff, where is it coming from? You wouldn't see, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So every time, and that's key, because now when you get information, it means you need to analyze it very well, right? And not jump to conclusions. Say, oh, here they're asking me to comment on this, right? Think clearly about it. Think carefully about it. Break down the task. What is it exactly that they're asking me?
Yeah. Okay. No, it makes sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Cindy, I think your hand was up after Tara.
So I wanted to ask in terms of, because I feel like when I am looking at the types of points I should put, I kind of have this question in my head, like, will it work? And if my answer is no, I don't put it. So how do I make that differentiation? Because for this social media, like, I'll use the SAICA example, where people went and put things on social media. SAICA came with their nice response and, you know, kind of reminding people that, you know, we still need to act without bringing the profession into dispute, but people still continued, like, you know. So I mean, we had all these engagement sessions. They were talking to us, asking our input. People still continued going to radio stations to criticize them. So like, it didn't really work, in my opinion. So like, for me, I'm just like, I think, will it work? And it's not only in a task like this. Some other things I'm like, should I put this down, or is it unrealistic?
So here's the thing. The moment you have that thought, you're fighting yourself, right? Imagine, like you said, but yeah, I'm going to switch it to the context of this school, right? The school just decides, well, if we do something, it just won't work. So let's leave it. Let's just be quiet. What do you think will happen? Brand reputation, brand damage.
Either way, their reputation has been damaged, though. Like, he did send a letter. Like, it's not like he didn't send a letter. He sent a letter before they went to social media.
So I'm trying to steer away from your live example. You know, I want
No,
to.
I'm saying like the school.
I want to
apologize in a
stick to the
letter.
theoretical example. But where are we today? We are in a better position, right? So it makes no sense for you to take no action where you need to do something about it, right? You can't control the behavior of the other party. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least show that you're extending the olive branch. At least show that you acknowledge that something was not right. At least that's the right thing to do, right? Because people will be saying you're full of yourself if you're quiet. You're just saying, well, I don't even see anything that went wrong. But if you acknowledge and you try and fix things, at least you are making an effort. Does that make sense? Think about it. Even in your normal relationships at home.
Ryan sent the letter before the teachers started complaining. Well, not the teachers, the parents started complaining. The letter was beforehand. I'm sure it was well drafted, that it was, you know, it included everything, and they still were like, we don't care about this letter. So that's why, like, he did take action. He even acted before they went to social media. So if his preventative action didn't do anything to them, like, what more can you, because that's originally what I thought, like, before I started getting emotional, I was like, he sent a letter, he did apologize, like, what more do they want?
Yeah, you know, what more do they want? But what else can you do about it? Well, invite them to the table. Let's have a conversation, right? Invite them to a Teams meeting. Invite them to a workshop. Let's have a conversation, right?
Okay, I see where you're coming from.
Okay. No. Hey, this conversation, I think I like it. It's nice. It's very interesting. I think, cause on my side, or what I said, cause this thing is already on public. I would say someone said it on Twitter. Say, hey, maybe one of the things that Ryan could have done is just to wake up in the morning, 4 a.m. on radio and updates everyone before they wake up. But yeah, but okay, fine. On my side was like, okay, fine, to issue a media statement there and say, okay, no, it's fine. We acknowledge 1, 2, and 3 and whatsoever. And on the other side, we are trying to still investigating this matter. And once we're done, we'll come up with like sort of like maybe conclusion. And we are taking this matter like as a agent, like sort of like we are prioritizing it.
But just be careful, right? Because here we're not asked about what to do about Ryan's behavior. We asked about what to do about the negative things that are being said. Am I correct? Let me just double check that before right? Because they said, and what should Archigos have done with regard to the negative social media posts, right? It wasn't about behavior, Ryan's behavior. It was negative social media posts, and that's where you need to focus your attention. Important breakdown what's being asked, right?
No, I hear you.
All right, awesome. Linda and Atara, those old hands.
Mine is an old hand, but I have something to say. This guy from the beginning was showing us how incompetent he was. So I'm just wondering, were we supposed to ignore that? At what point were we supposed to say that? Because I thought it was something worth mentioning. I mean, he like
but take a step back, Atara. If you experience, let's say this was a real life thing, right? Real life thing, real life thing, and you're working for Ryan, right?
Yeah.
And you know Ryan pays your salary.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna tell him.
You weren't gonna tell him, right? You might find other ways to try and point him in the right direction, but you wouldn't say that directly unless you're frustrated and you're about to issue a resignation letter, right? So
yeah.
So forget for a second that this is, you know, a theoretical case study. Think about it in your workplace, because that's what you're going to be. You're going to be an entry-level CA. You're going to be working in an organization. What you say there is also something that you should be able to say when you're in real life. Right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Kum. But wait, one last thing. Why were they telling us what he was saying about CA, what he was saying about that CA in the beginning? I think Saika was driving us to be angry, like they were pushing us to be upset. And by the last task, we were all upset. We were all unhappy with this guy.
But be careful, be happy, stay happy, right? All right, but anyway, we've gone through the whole task. Now I just want to wrap up, right? It's been a long evening, I can imagine, for you guys, right? So Atara, I've answered your question. I'm just going to take one last hand, which is Mole, and then I'm not taking any more hands, guys. We can chat on the side wherever you want us to chat. If you've got any other questions, but I just want to dismiss the session, right? But Mole, go for it, because your hand is up already.
Okay. So I just wanted to get like guidance on the first two what's this? The first two requirements. So I just wanted to find out with the first one, would you say we should look at it from the what's this? The IFA's perspective, and then with the second one, with the second part, we should look at how all of this would affect all the stakeholders.
All right, so we are talking about, do you think RFA's demand for rebates of tuition fees in 2020 had validity? Right, so they were saying that because you saved costs, it must filter through to us. So is that valid, right? Then what are some of the factors the directors of Akigos should have considered in assessing whether to grant rebates? Now you need to look at everything. Can we afford to do this? If we save this one stakeholder by doing this, what happens to the other one, and all those other considerations we're talking about.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, guys. I hope this was useful. I hope this helps going forward. I hope you guys know what to think about going forward when you see these things. I hope you guys will remember to break down the task well before you start killing the task. All right. Remember to first answer what you've been asked for, give the advice on that front. Then you can talk about all the other considerations that you have, right, without wasting time. Okay. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. I will let you guys go and have a good night for those that are going to bed. For those that are going to watch soccer, enjoy, whatever the case may be.
Thanks, Kumo.
Thank you so much, Kumo. It was very, very useful. I enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And I like that you guys were participating. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.